I got laid off with a bunch of people, and MSU Denver had this thing where they don't care about your academic background, and I took advantage of that. I applied and got in, and um, started my career, my college career at MSU Denver, and I'm also a first generation college student. And that's just not just my parents. I mean, that's like my aunts and uncles, cousins. I always tell people in my family, you either went and worked until the day you died or you joined the Air Force. And neither of those were really a good fit for me. I mean, the working, I mean, you got to work, but um, yeah, so I kind of went my own route. I transferred from MSU Denver to the University of Miami. Um, I was studying public relations here at MSU Denver, and their program hadn't developed into what it is today. And so I was looking for more of a challenge. I was doing really, really well once I started MSU Denver. And then I was just looking for more. And the University of Miami seemed like a great opportunity, and they had a good program. And I wanted to get involved in sports, and they had a good football team. And so it kind of all just aligned. And I started there and graduated um, and went right into sports. So I worked for the football team while I was there, and then I worked for the Miami Dolphins when I graduated. That was my first job out of college. And then I worked for Homestead Miami Speedway. They host the NASCAR championship every year. And then I kind of got tired of South Florida, believe it or not, and I missed my family and being in Denver. And so I moved back to Denver, and I worked for Waste Management, which is more of a kind of utilities company, which was a totally different shift from sports. Um, but all I talked about, I got to learn about recycling and waste and environmentalism and everything in that world, which was not something I was used to. And then I came here to MSU Denver. So, and then like I said before, I'm currently getting my MBA at DU. So, so picking the right school, right? The decision to go to the University of Denver came down to I had gone to the University of Miami, and I have a good network in South Florida now. I have a lot of friends and stuff that are professional workers down there. And then I have friends in Chicago and New York and San Francisco. But being a first generation college student here in Denver, I don't have a lot of professional network friends and family here in Denver. So when I was looking for a job and stuff, I was just applying and hoping that I get in. It was really, there was no network or anything. And the two jobs I had with the Miami Dolphins and Homestead Miami Speedway prior were purely based on connections that I had made working in sports. So I was kind of freaking out. So that's kind of when I started looking at MBA programs. So I knew I wanted to do something or do an MBA program that was here in Denver, and that would increase my network here locally. Because I would like to stay here in Denver and raise my family. That's my son there. Raise my family here in Denver. And so, yeah, so that was kind of a big factor. So some of the things that you need to decide are like the community, the network that you want to have. A lot of times you can make up for things in undergrad that you didn't do. So if you weren't really involved in school because you didn't have the time, getting your master's, you can get involved with like the graduate student. There's a lot of graduate student clubs and stuff like that. That increases your network. If you didn't go to a lot of games, I actually worked all of the football games. So I went and I was on the sideline, which was cool, but I didn't like tailgate or anything like that. So now at DU, of course, COVID hit, which didn't help, but before COVID hit, I was at like, me and my son would go to every hockey game. We would sit on the glass, and, I really got to enjoy the sports instead of working them. So you can do some stuff like that, and then really think about what can the school offer you, right? So it's finding what's important to you, and then how does that school fit, and how does that program fit? If you're like, well, I want to be CEO one day, well, does that program produce a lot of CEOs? What does it take to be a CEO? Do you need a lot of, connections, and do you need a good network? Probably, so all of that stuff kind of encompasses and should push your goal forward, right? Because it is a lot of money to go to grad school. I think my program's like 75,000. I got into the UNC Chapel Hill program. That was $186,000 for an MBA, which put my program into perspective, because I got into DU and I was like, oh, 75 is a lot. And then I got into UNC Chapel Hill and I was like, 75 is not that bad now. Like, 186,000 is a lot of money, Um, and then I also applied at Arizona State just for the cheap program, and that one's like 45,000 door to door, which is really good. But like I said, the most important thing was that network, and that network may be good in Arizona or in Phoenix if that's where I wanted to live, but I want to be in here in Denver. So didn't for the extra 30,000, I felt like the network could bring me that offset, right? Um, so yeah, in state, out of state, those are the things you want to think about. The network, the cost. A lot of times if you're going out of state, you're going to pay out of state tuition. Sometimes with grad programs, it's just a flat fee across the board. Um, so that's something you want to think of, and then comfort. You know, how comfortable do you want to be while in grad school? A lot of us, when we're in undergrad, are really uncomfortable. We're barely paying our bills. We're working a lot. So you want to find a program that's going to fit your life that you're in. If you have kids, if you're married, or whatever. I always tell people to try to get grad school done when you're young and you have energy. I'm 35 now, and I can't do all nighters. I just can't. So I have to make sure I set time in my day to get things done, because I'm not going to cram the night before a test, um, or I'm not going to cram the night before a project's due. That's just not in the cards for me anymore. I need like my 6 to 7 hours to 8 hours of sleep, like minimum. So yeah, all those things kind of go into it there. So I always say that every university has two reputations, right? Like the reputation that they project, and then the reputation that they actually have amongst not just their students and alumni, but rival students, rival alumni. What's their perception outside of the school, and what they're pushing out marketing wise, right? Like a lot of people love Duke University, they love Duke basketball, but I've met nothing but complete douchebags that have gone to Duke. So that's like the second perception of that school, like at least for me and a lot of the people that I've met. Um, so you always want to kind of think about that, because that kind of goes into it, right? You're paying for all of this. Like you're spending a lot of money for all of this stuff, you know? So like if you're like, wow, I love Duke basketball, but then you get there and you don't get along with anybody, that's not going to do you any good, right? You're going to kind of fizzle out. Um, Faculty prestige, if that's important to you, that's something you want to try to aim for. If you like reading the Harvard Business Review and you see a lot of stuff coming out of, Professor so and so at Notre Dame, then that may be something that, you reach out to him, connect with him, say, hey, I read your article, I loved it, I'm applying to graduate school. What other things do you guys have going on over there? Try to make those connections kind of going in to really, this is your last chance, unless you're getting a PhD. And even if you are getting a PhD, this is kind of your last chance to like get the education that you want, right? In undergrad, a lot of times, especially for us, we don't have a lot of choices. We have to go to the local school, but when you're looking at grad schools, maybe your company's paying for half of it. And it's like, wow, that really opens things up. A lot of times what we do and where we go for undergrad boils down to money, funding, because we're so dependent on our parents and our families. Now all of that's gone. It's completely on you, your situation, and kind of what you've built and what you want to continue building. you know. And then is reputation worth the money? Something to think about. UNC Chapel Hill's a great school. They have a great business school, but like, you know, how many of them live in Denver? If I lost my job, how many of them are going to be around, that can help me out or that I can connect with? Probably not a lot. Now, if I lived in North Carolina or South Carolina, it'd be huge. They have a huge reputation in that region. So things to think about. And then of course, network. That's like the number one thing in graduate school. At least for me, I know some programs, if you're in a PhD program, maybe the network isn't as important. The articles you publish are kind of speak for themselves, right? But a lot of times, even when it comes down to publishing articles, the ones that get published in the Harvard Business Reviews or the Harvard Medical Review or the Harvard Law Review are the ones from those prestigious schools. They're not publishing stuff from Jacksonville State or, Grambling State. They're publishing stuff from LSU and, CU Boulder and Minnesota and Iowa and things like that. That's all they're looking at, because there are so many schools that are out there. The next thing is testing. So If you're going into law school, you're going to look at the LSAT. You're looking at a lot of just grad programs, whether that be anthropology or psychology. You're going to take the GRE. And then a lot of times they have like specific GREs for specific majors that you're going to be kind of going for with your grad program. The GMATs for business school usually. I think there's an accounting kind of GMAT too that's specific to accounting. So you can get your CPA, your certified public accounting master's. And then the MCAT is your medical one. So if you're going to do anything medical, you're going to go to med school or you're going to be a physical therapist, you're probably going to take the MCAT. A lot of schools that require the GRE or GMAT are starting to waive these and not make them as important when you're applying to grad school as they used to. They used to be really dependent on these exams. But these exams have like shown a lot of bad things. And then with COVID, it's been really tough to get these exams in, and they're only relevant, or the scores are only good for a certain amount of time. But when it comes to the medical or law, the MCAT and LSAT, like there's just no avoiding it unless you were to go get a master's and then maybe apply to law school separately. But I think even then they'd want to see an LSAT or an MCAT. And then different undergraduate majors. So a lot of people think if you want to go to law school, you need to be a pre-law undergrad, and that is not true at all. So a good example here is the average LSAT score is based on major. This is from 2014, but a lot of my friends that were going to law school, they majored in philosophy, which I thought was super weird. But they have gone on, and I have a few friends at Harvard that are getting a law degree, and they did really well in the LSAT. And I struggled through philosophy. But economics is another one. With the LSAT, you're going to be tested on logic, just pure logic, taking emotion out of things. Philosophy majors, economics, history, English, I guess those majors in that type of thinking tend to score well, which is pretty interesting, right? Criminal justice, political science, they're kind of towards the bottom on this scale. So a lot of people think, yeah, like if I want to major in social work, I need to go take whatever credits I can and get a social work undergrad to get into a master. No. A lot of times admissions teams want those different undergraduate majors because you're bringing in some flavor to the cohorts that they're bringing in, right? You're bringing in new ideas, a new perspective to their program, which is just going to make their program better and make students learn from each other more, which is always a big goal in graduate school. Have I missed any questions yet? I just want to check. No? Okay. So then the next thing is going to be funding, right? How am I going to pay for this thing? If you go to any graduate school website, they're pretty transparent as far as how much it's going to cost. So you can always find that information. You got to think about graduate school. And I always say, I would say, I mean, any higher education student loans, generally it's a pretty good interest rate on your student loans, unless you're getting a private loan. So I'm mainly talking about federal loans right now, but it's an investment. It's not like you're going out and you're buying a Rolex and hoping that in 50 years it'll pay itself off. I mean, this is an investment in yourself. And even if you get behind on your student loans or something happens, they're generally willing and almost mandated by law at this point to work with you. Private loans are different. If you go with like Wells Fargo, sometimes they can feel pretty predatory. So I always tell people to avoid those. I went to the University of Miami, which was $45,000 a year at the time I went. And then now I'm going and finishing up my MBA at DU, and all of my loans are on federal loans. So it can be done, especially for us first generation students. It seems like it's a lot easier for us to get loans. Definitely don't pull out more than you need to, but think about it as an investment, not as like a bad debt. You're not buying an overpriced Camry. This is a degree that will never go away, and it will elevate your career, right? And so long term, you look at 50 years of working or 40 years of working. If you're 26 and you finish your master's, and this master's gives you an extra even $5,000 per year for 30 years, I mean, it more than pays for itself. Plus, there's a lot of programs out there to pay them off that are like income driven programs and stuff. So think about that. Another thing to think about is the Grad Plus loan, which is a federal loan and it's credit based. And when I applied, my credit wasn't very good. I think I was like at a 620 credit score, and I applied and got it. And so that's how I'm finishing up my MBA is with a Grad Plus loan, and it covers everything. It covers tuition, fees, books, and then it gives you an allotment for living expenses. So if you need it, which I've been kind of spare on using it, I haven't like just been maxing it out. But if you need it, you can theoretically like pay some of your rent with it and buy a new laptop and stuff like that to get you through grad school. Um, and then there always are scholarships. A lot of them are merit-based scholarships going into grad school. Ask a lot of questions about their scholarships. I've found out at DU that once you're admitted, whatever scholarships you get upon admission, that's it. There aren't additional scholarships coming down the road, which was really disheartening to hear. And not something that they tell you openly about till you're like in and you've started, you're like 3/4 in. And at that point, it's almost impossible to transfer graduate school. So if you were expecting money to come down the pipeline, and some of my cohort members were, it's not coming. So definitely ask as many questions as you can, and look at scholarships as like, if you ask and they say no, you're in the exact same position you're in. You didn't lose anything, right? So ask as many questions as you can about scholarships and money and funding, and because upon admission is kind of when you have the most power. Graduate programs are trying to fill seats, right? They want to admit people, especially if academically they think you can do it, you can complete the program, you're in the driver's seat. I know it kind of feels like they're giving you an opportunity, and they are, but they also need you to get in that seat. They need to fill that seat. So ask questions. If filling that seat, if they already have you on the hook and they can throw you $5,000 to shut you up, that's 5 Gs you just got, you know? So think about it from that perspective a little bit. It is a business when it boils down to it. These seats aren't filled. These graduate programs tend to disappear. They're not usually state funded. So they're almost like mini businesses within colleges. So you're definitely in the driver's seat. Then you want to think about timeline. So how do you know when to pursue graduate school? I always say you want to work a couple of years. It sort of depends on your program. If you're going into med school and you interned well and you have good grades, you have a 4.0, you can go right from undergrad into med school. A lot of times with MBAs, sometimes with law school, they want you to go clerk for a while, go be a paralegal, you know, do kind of a couple years of grunt work, then apply to law school. So it just kind of depends. Like I said, I wish I would have completed my MBA at 27 years old, just for the sake of energy. But I don't know career-wise if it would have done as much for me as it has now, because I know where I want to go, what do I want to accomplish, and where I want to be, right? Just not just professionally, but like across the board, you know. I mean, I have a wife and a kid now, and I know in 5 years I want to be able to like go to recitals, and you know, like those things are hard to think of until you have them, and you have to think about them, right? So that one's definitely personal, and try to think through, you know, those types of things. The other thing is, you know, prepare to take GRE, GMAT, LSAT, MCAT. I've heard there's some, and Asia, you can probably confirm this. There's programs at MSU Denver to help you pay for some of these tests or some of the preparation for these tests. So if there are, take advantage of them. Like I said, this is the time. I feel like in undergrad, we don't ask a lot of questions. We just want to get a good grade and graduate, you know. Now that you're going into grad school, I mean, you're a full-on adult. Like, start asking these questions. Be persistent about where you want to go, what you want to do. This is where you really dig your heels in on your career, the life you're building, and stuff like that. Definitely pay attention to application dates. Those aren't lenient. So those are hard dates. I've seen people have to wait a whole year because they missed a deadline by a day or 2 days or something. And it's like, well, sorry, especially when it comes to like I feel like this is weird to explain, but graduate enrollment is really dependent on the economy. So if the economy is really good, you're probably going to see less competition going into your grad programs. So when I applied in the summer of 2019, and the economy, like unemployment was like below 6%. I mean, the economy was doing good. And I have 12 people in my cohort. The 2020 cohort, which was a year later when the economy had like tanked, COVID like destroyed everything, right? That cohort, so my cohort was 12, that cohort is 47. So that's like a 4-time jump in 1 year because of the economy. And so when the economy's up and everybody's making money, nobody wants to go to school. The economy's down, people lose their jobs or whatever. It's like, well, if I don't have a job, I might as well be working towards something. So they'll apply. And you got to remember, there are some kids out there that they have 4.0s and great, they can take the GMAT with their eyes closed and score well. And those are the kids you got to compete against, right? So those are the things you kind of want to take into consideration as well. Right now is a really competitive time to get into grad school, and grad school numbers are up. There's more people coming, makes it tough. And then interviewing, and I always say never interview with your friends. They're not critical of you. I mean, find anybody to interview you, somebody that doesn't know you very well, that can be very critical of your interview skills for the application process. You can Google graduate application questions. I mean, almost every grad school's questions are out there. They've been asking the same questions for 50 years, and you can kind of practice them with your not friend, right? And get some good feedback, work through those answers. Essays, this is your time to talk about things that didn't go perfectly in undergrad. I didn't have the highest. I had like a 2.1 GPA. No, 3.1. Geez, not 2.1. 3.1 GPA from college, but I worked full time. I had 7 internships when I graduated. I didn't have textbooks. I didn't have enough money for textbooks. So like I had a 3.1 working, 30 hours a week at a restaurant, interning 12 hours a week for the football team, interning another 10 hours a week for the Florida Panthers. And then I didn't have textbooks. So like that was what my essay composed of. And they read it, and instead of looking at my GPA and thinking, God, this guy's an idiot, which they should have, I don't know, but they read my essay and they're like, wow, considering he didn't have textbooks and was working 40 to 50 hours a week, I think he did pretty good. And so, I got to the interview process, and then I don't know why people like me, but once they meet me and I interview with them, they tend to like me. And that's how I got in. I kind of skied in. But like I said, if I had applied this last year, I don't know that I'd have gotten in, because I'd been up against perfect GPAs and GMAT scores and people with cash, right? And then you just want to keep track of general timing, even going through the application process. And even when you're admitted, there's certain things you got to do. Like even this last year was like COVID training and active shooter training. Like there's just a lot of hoops to jump through before you can like enroll in classes. There's a lot of stuff, you got to get all of your transcripts, and it's just a lot of minutia you got to get through to get to the acceptance, and then from the acceptance to actually enrolling. So it's best to kind of keep track of all of that. So I guess the last question is, what can you do now? So, you want to start thinking about where you are in your college career. If you're a junior and you want to go right after college, that's totally doable. Start making those steps now. Start thinking about it. You're probably going to be applying to grad school your senior year. You're going to take the GRE, GMAT, LSAT, MCAT your senior year, which is not uncommon. A lot of students do that. You want to make sure you test well and do, so you got to prep on top of your classes, right? Because you still got classes. If you're going to wait a while, then, start thinking about your career. Where do you want to go? What's going to look good on a graduate school resume? Instead of working at, somewhere nobody's heard of, it may be best to work at if you're going into a business school, work for a big brand. Try to get a job at Chipotle or Einstein's Bagels. Their corporate headquarters is here in Denver, and they got a lot of cool jobs that you can get into, Coors, stuff like that. If you want to go medical school, you got to get into a hospital, right? I mean, start doing stuff at a hospital. Law school, you're going to want to clerk or be a paralegal. Even just working the front desk at a law firm, and at least put yourself in that environment. That'll, one, give you a good thing to talk about on your application, and two, it'll kind of double down and make sure that you're sure this is what you want to do. Are you sure you want to be a lawyer? Because, if you work at a law firm, I mean, there's a lot of a-holes that are lawyers. Do you want to be one of them? Or does that inspire you? You're like, yeah, I want to be a shark. So it'll definitely like kind of put that stuff into perspective. So, and then start putting yourself in seats of people. If you're working at Chipotle and you're like, man, the CEO looks stressed out all the time, but the chief financial officer, that guy is awesome. Maybe talk to him about his career and what he's doing now and how he got there. And, maybe you go the finance route, which is great. I mean, your personal finances will be in order, but then, if you love that stuff, you like to see nice balance sheets, that may be the way to go. Start thinking about the job market. You can do a lot of research. There's a lot of stuff out there, both from the federal government on different industries and even just going on Glassdoor. When I was in college, I really wanted to work for Krunke. I wanted to work for the Denver Nuggets and the Avs. And I interned there one summer and I hated it. And I hated it. Everybody that I worked with hated their jobs, hated their life. I mean, it was miserable. And I was like, this is the last place I want to work, So getting in there really starts to change things. And even if you don't get in there, if you don't find a job there, ask to interview people that work there. Say, hey, can I buy you a coffee? Pick your brain about your career, what you do at Chipotle or wherever it is you want to work, and start getting to know them. That could add to your network, and they may even write a letter of recommendation for you to business school or to law school. It just, some of those things align when you put the initial effort in, right? And then the last couple things is, do you have time? Can you make time? Not just time thinking of the program from 21 months, however long the program is, but like time week to week, day to day. If you're going to law school, it's a lot of reading. If you're going to medical school, you're not going to have a job. Like, medical school is going to be your life. There's nothing else. Are you okay? If you're dating the love of your life, is she or he or they going to be, okay with you studying 70 hours a week and being stressed out and not really understanding and not able to help with what you're studying if you're in medical school or you're going to be a physical therapist? So start having those conversations. We did a seminar on support. Do you have support? If you have 3 kids, is grandma really involved? Do you have that support system to help you with the kids? You don't want to come out with a graduate degree and then like your kids don't know you, you're divorced, I mean, that's not fun either, right? It's all encompassing. Like, graduate school has to make your life better. You can't sacrifice your personal life for graduate school or you're not going to be happy, right? And then once you do decide to apply, really nail these things down, nail down the application process. You got to get your transcripts, test scores, get your resume ready, essays ready, practice the interview. You want to keep in touch with the school. I mean, you want to be kind of annoying. Am I crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's? Is my application going to go through? And then one thing that hit me upside the head, I had a deposit that I had to pay that nobody talked about. So I got accepted, and then I went through all the active shooter training and all that stuff. And it's like, cool, I'm ready to enroll. And it like wouldn't go through. And they're like, you have to pay $1,500. And I was like, I don't have $1,500 just sitting around right now. Like, so I had to borrow money from my mom to pay my deposit. And that went towards my tuition. So I got it back when my financial aid went through. But it was just like a wrench in the in the system, right? I mean, you're not expecting to pay $1,500. I was hoping to get a new computer, and there's my computer money. It's gone. So things like that, like, make sure, like I said, ask all those questions, even if they're a little bit uncomfortable. If they're uncomfortable, ask them early, because you want to get this stuff out of the way and just be prepared for it. My application process was like 6 months. I could have saved that $1,500. Instead, I got, I got this like bill from, left field. So that's pretty much it. I feel like I kind of whipped through that. I don't know why I'm talking so fast today. Uh, but yeah, does anybody have any questions? Were there questions that came up in the chat?
Well, feel free, everyone, to put questions in the chat or to unmute.
Oh, there it is.
And Rico, I thought it was awesome. I put a few extra comments that I might say on the video since we're recording. But one thing about the waivers that you were just talking about, I mentioned for the deposit fee, I mentioned to ask about the waivers. And sometimes, like what in my school, they let you like charge it to your tuition for the following year.
Yeah.
That was upcoming. So that was really nice because I could not afford for my deposit.
Yeah. So I
was
found
able
out
to
after I got in that my program director was like, you could have just asked for a waiver. Like, we're not going to lose you for a $1,500, $1,500. I mean, we talk pretty candidly because I'm in higher ed and I know how it works. But she was like, I'm not going to lose you for $1,500 when you have a cohort of 12. It's not going to come down to 15, And I was like, well, I didn't ask. If I would have asked, I probably would have gotten that waiver done.
Always ask. And then I did see a question pop up.
So what is the best time to take the GRE since most programs close in December? Don't they have rolling GRE, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Asia. You took it, right? I didn't take it.
Yeah, I definitely, they do have like rolling deadlines. And so you're able to see like similar to like the SAT or the ACT, if you were to Google like GRE testing dates in Colorado, and then they'll give you a site on the GRE website where you can type in your zip code to see when they're doing it. And so I would, to be honest, look at when your application deadlines are due, because normally they want you to be able to take that GRE, and it can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to get those test results back. And it's ideal to get them back before you would need to turn in your application. Sometimes schools say that your GRE results can come later, but you just want to have them just in case. And then also, if you already know which schools you're applying to, when you take the GRE, it costs money to be able to send your GRE test scores to the schools. But if you're already taking the GRE, at the end of the test or before it, they'll say like, what schools do you want us to send your scores to? And you can have them automatically send them to you too. But yeah, I would shoot for taking it anywhere from like 6 to 8 weeks before that application deadline. But do you all have any other dates? That's, I think, around
you have to pay. Is that what you're asking, Jose? Do you have to pay for the GRE?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's what is it? A couple $100?
Yeah, I think it was about 225.
Did you take it, Sam?
I was supposed to, and then I never did. But I got my work to pay for it, so that's another recommendation. Like if you work anywhere that has professional development funds available to you, I had my boss bought me my study book and paid for the test, and then like I said, I never ended up taking it. But there's different options for it, and I put in the link in the chat for the resources that we have on campus to pay for it. But they can be all those exams, the GMAT, the GRE, the LSAT, all of them can be rather expensive. I think the LSAT is the most expensive. So I would definitely look into scholarship funds and maybe taking out an extra loan the semester before you plan on taking it, or extra scholarship money, something like that, so that you can use that to pay for the test. And then in terms of timeline, I think 6 weeks out is minimum. I like to encourage you all to take it sooner. So like Jose mentioned in the chat, a lot of programs, their deadline is in December. And I would honestly take your tests, like your exams, whatever your grad school requires, in the summertime. And that way you give yourself at least 2 opportunities to take the exam, because you could do it a second time And usually the second time you score a little bit higher than the first time because you're more used to the exam and the layout. And you'll have 2 test scores to choose from as well to send to the schools. And if you already selected which ones to send it to, they'll send the updated scores to those schools.
Yeah. There's also fees for everything revolved around those tests. So like if something comes up and you have to change the date, 125
Yeah.
bucks. Like,
Yep.
so
Mm-hmm.
I have friends that have taken it and they tell all their family, they're like, don't have any babies, don't get married on this day. Like I'm taking the GRE, GMAT, LSAT, whatever it is. It kind of becomes your life for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I was going to say something else. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, maybe it'll come to me.
Are there more questions as Rico's thinking of his important knowledge to share?
I should have written it down. It's gone. It's gone forever. I'll think about it like at 3 a.m. tomorrow. Watch. I'll be like, oh, that
Dang it.
thing.
Well, we'll probably send a follow-up email to this. So if you remember later, we could put it in the email, maybe.
What part of all of this, I guess, intimidates everyone the most or scares you the most, or
Good question.
the cost?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the application as a whole. Yeah, instead of thinking about the application as a whole, think about it in parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before you even apply, you're going to take the GRE or GMAT. And if you do, so here's the thing with the GRE, GMAT, or whatever the standardized says, if you completely bomb it, don't give them your scores. Just try. I mean, especially nowadays, like a lot of schools are not requiring it. So I avoided it like the plague. I didn't ever even take it. So remember what I told you, that this is a business, right? I mean, and I would have had candid conversations with the admissions team at DU, because they would be like, well, your essay's great, your interview's great, we want you, but like, we're kind of hesitant on the math part of it. And in my head, I was like, you should be, because I'm terrible at math. But I knew I could muscle through it somehow. I would figure it out, but taking a standardized GRE test, I was going to completely bomb the math portion. So I wasn't going to take it. So I just had a conversation with him and was like, hey, look, you make me take the GRE, I'm going to go to CU. I'm going to go to the University of Colorado in Boulder. I graduated from a top 50 university in the United States. I'm going to go there and I'm going to save $30,000. So like, you can either accept me or I'll go take the GRE, but I'm not applying here. I'm going to go save money, and they had no idea that, I guess I put off the feeling that I would do well, but in my mind, I was like, if I have to take it, I'm going to do bad. And I don't know what I'm going to do. But, I mean, you just got to kind of put your chips in at some point, right? And then same thing with the cost. I mean, I guess the question it comes down to, Amber, is, are you worth the investment? If you don't feel like you're worth investing in our other companies, our other people, is a scholarship committee going to think that? And I know it can be like intimidating and scary, but I think I did my math on my MBA and everything. And I think I'm going to pay like $450 a month because all of my loans are federal. So to me, it's just a payment. I have 120 payments to make as long as I stay in higher ed, and they'll be forgiven. So that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm never going to pay them completely off. I'm going to qualify. I qualify for the, whatchamacallit, the public service loan forgiveness. So I'm eligible for that, and I'll do my 120 payments at $400 whatever dollars, $500, and move on with my life.
I put something about that in the chat. I think honestly, grad school is so worth it to get where you want to be. And if you have to take out a little bit of loans, to me, it's still worth that money. I think a lot of people and the upcoming generation are nervous about loan debt because of like Rico. Asia, I actually don't know how old you are, so I'm assuming you're in our generation. But in our generation, like we have a lot of loan debt, but it's really manageable to pay off, and it's worth it so that you can get the job you want, get the promotions you're wanting, all of that kind of stuff, and you'll pay off your bills before you know it. The thing that I want to say that I put in the chat is that I think you have to consider the payoff in the future. So, for example, if you're getting your master's in teaching and you decide to go to a really expensive school, you're even with a master's, you're not going to be making a whole lot of money in education. It's sad, it stinks, but it's the way it is. And so it probably isn't the wisest choice for you to go to a school with a huge ticket price when you're not going to be making a lot of money. But for example, if you're doing some other kind of field and you have a higher salary range that you could potentially be making with the master's or PhD threshold, then that's probably a good choice to make, and it's worth that payoff. But
Here's the other thing too, right? Like, so if you're going into an industry like teaching or accounting or nursing, the information is the same. It doesn't change depending on where you're going. Same with medical school. I mean, you want to get into a decent medical school because you have to get a residency after, but and then with law school, it can be a little tricky. You want to go to a good law school because firms only hire from certain law schools and blah, blah, blah. But accounting, like, why would you go spend $70,000 if you can spend 20 for the same? The math doesn't change. The math is the math, right?
Right.
So that's always something to think about too. With teaching, I don't know, it's dependent. I mean, if you get into teaching, if you get a master's of arts in teaching, like from MSU Denver, if you have a master's, you automatically make 10,000 more than every other teacher walking around because you have a master's. They actually value education. So like my wife has a master's and she's a 7th grade teacher. She makes about 12,000 more than everybody else, every other teacher. But when you get into admin, if you want to be a principal, most of them have at least a master's and they make 6 figures. I mean, they put in ridiculous hours, but you can make a livable wage in education with an education, right? So it's just kind of mapping those things out and figuring it out.
I really appreciate the comment that Asia said in the chat. Asia, I don't know if you want to share that out loud since we're recording.
Oh yeah, I can. I was just saying that when I was trying to also get out of the GRE, unfortunately, my program was like, no, it's required for you. And so I was like, okay, I hate tests and like I have so much test anxiety. I'm an English major. I like writing papers, that sort of thing. But I just kept doing a lot of research about like, okay, how much does the GRE really matter? What do I need to put my focus and attention to? And I showed this a little bit in my presentation, but with like depending on the program you're applying to, at least with the GMAT and GRE and that sort of thing, focusing on what your program is and trying to get the highest score in that subject area is one thing that admissions they're looking at too. And so I was like, okay, I know I can do really well in the vocabulary and the writing section because that's what I want to go to grad school for. And then I'll just try to do my best at the math and science, but not stress too much. And then just took a bunch of different practice tests to be able to see like what am I going to score on. And they have a million different resources out there too for you. Some of them you can pay for, but there are some free out there too that they have timelines like how far in advance should you study for the GRE, depending on like 6 weeks out, you should be studying this, 3 weeks out, that sort of thing. And so I just recommend just Googling like that.
So somebody asked about the MSU Denver's MBA reputation. So it's definitely on the upward swing. It's new. It's less than 3 or 4 years old. So it's brand new. Their enrollment has skyrocketed. Mainly because it's an MBA program that you can complete the MBA program for under 20,000, which is like unheard of. They are AACSB accredited, which is like the accreditation for business schools. If you ever look at an MBA program and they're not AACSB accredited, do not go there. I don't think Johnson and Wales is, like University of Phoenix, I don't think is. So like those things kind of matter when it comes to the business school, but MSU Denver's is accredited through the AACSB, and they're kind of, so a lot of their students that are enrolled now are enrolled because they want the three letters after their name. They want Rico Dominguez, MBA, because they're already in a job that is basically ready to give them a raise once they complete their MBA. So even if you're not in that position, that's who you're going to be sitting next to in class. And those are the people that you want to network with, right? Their careers are already established and they're just getting this MBA to move up in their company. So something to think about, you're not going to get the huge network you're going to get out of DU or CU because it's only 4 or 5 years old, but you're going to be rubbing elbows every day with people with pretty well established careers from what I've seen of the student body. You're not going to be rubbing elbows with super young people that, fresh out of college, 22-year-olds, So if you were to go, I don't know what your situation is, but if you were to go fresh out of college, you'd be one of the only ones in that situation and able to connect with some people with, a pretty well established career, which would be great. So just to give you something to think about.
Can I say one more thing about the timeline idea?
Yeah.
From that question earlier? What I like to recommend for timelines and breaking up your application so it doesn't feel so overwhelming is working backwards from the date that it's due and giving yourself a few months before that. So like in the summertime, like I said, GRE or whatever test you need to take. Then maybe August, you finish your resume. September, you finish your statement of purpose. October, you have 2 people review both those things and you do edits. November, I don't know the rest of the stuff you have to do, but you keep doing it like that month by whatever they're requiring so that you are for sure to complete all that stuff and you're not waiting till last minute to do all of it at once.
And once you start the application process, it's pretty annoying. I mean, they email you until it's complete. At least that's how DU was. It was like you're getting nudged through a little bit.
That's true.
So it's almost like you want to complete it just to stop the emails.
Are there more questions from anyone?
Official transcripts. I want to say it's like $20, right? Or $10.
I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Every school is different. I had to get them because I was here. I was kind of pissed about the transcript thing because I was like, so my University of Miami transcript shows my MSU Denver grades. Why do I have to get transcripts? And they told me to shut up and just get the transcript. So, but I was like, I don't understand why I need multiple, because I went to Community College of Aurora to get my EMT basic. And then I went to college at MSU Denver, and then I went to Miami, and I had to get all of those turned in.
Yeah. Well, that's something for you all to know is the reason is that most schools calculate your GPA from all the schools you've attended.
Yeah.
So if you're like Rico and you've been at 3 schools for your undergraduate degree, they'll take the average GPA from all 3 of those schools to determine the GPA that you actually have. So even if you have, let's say, a 4.0 at MSU Denver, but you had a 2.0 when you were at CCA, that they'll put the average of both of those. So that's kind of important to know.
So transcripts from MSU Denver are $10. And you can get them sent digitally, which I think everybody is pretty much doing. or you can have them sent through the mail for additional charges. So another thing too is I had some friends at Miami who ended up going to grad school internationally, and the country of origin paid them to go. So I have two friends that went to Italy and one that went to the London School of Economics, and none of them paid for grad school.
Wow,
Like
that's awesome.
crazy. I mean, they also didn't have to pay for medical, but I mean, we can get into the political stuff, but they have to pay for a lot of stuff. You can't work though. That's the only thing. So like,
Yeah.
they had to take loans out to survive, and London is incredibly expensive. And then if you're going to med school, I have a lot of friends that didn't get into an American med school, and so they just went to the Bahamas.
Whoa.
And
Never thought about that. That's cool.
they got their med school at the Bahamas, and they got residency. It's all about residency. Once you get a good residency, you're going to be a good doctor, and you're apply all the things you learn in medical school.
That's so cool.
So yeah, so stuff to think about. Like there are ways to get into grad school. There's an infinite amount of ways, right? The application for international programs is different. It takes a little bit more. You got to apply for visas and stuff like that. You got to get shots. So it's definitely a longer process. But if you have a really good purpose for going to that school, I mean, it's, the story starts to write itself, right? So something to think about. All right. Asia's dipping
Bye,
out.
Asia.
Bye.
Bye. Great job.
Yeah, if anyone else needs to go, no worries. But let's give Rico a round of applause. You can use the little smiley face plus thing to put a little clap mark
Thank you.
as well, or put something in the chat. Thank you all for coming. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's all about how to fund your grad school experience. So that should be helpful.
All right. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Oh, let me pause this recording.